The U.S. is preparing for a potential war with the Chinese regime. A new Navy plan calls for robotics, more command centers, and more personnel in order to be ready to fight China by 2027. This is in response to regime leader Xi Jinping's call for his forces to be ready to invade Taiwan by the same year. NTD's Chris Beers asked Grant Newsham, a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy, how likely war with China really is.
Well, I think it's likely. It used to be 10, 20 years ago, there was zero chance of it, but these days it's certainly a reasonable probability that it could happen. It's not inevitable, but it could happen. Xi Jinping is serious when he issues these orders, but it's also worth noting that successive Chinese leaders have made similar directives to their forces. Right after Tiananmen Square, for example, the Chinese military was given its orders to be able to defeat a country that has aircraft carriers. That means the U.S. And they have gone about setting up a military that is designed to beat the Americans. Xi has been very clear when he's met with President Biden that talk about Taiwan is all well and good, but at some point the matter has to be resolved. The Chinese military is getting ready for war, and I would say it already is. It just depends on what kind of war they have in mind. Global war, they would have some trouble at this point, but something closer to China, they could do very well if they pick their time, pick their spots.
And how prepared is the U.S. to meet that possibility?
Nowhere near what we should be. And this has been sort of a multi-decade failing by now, that successive waves of naval leaders, U.S. military leaders have not done what they needed to do to recognize the threat and to get the U.S. military ready. And that includes the U.S. defense industrial base that has been allowed to atrophy to the point where we can barely build enough ships to replace the existing ones that we have to retire. Meanwhile, China, whose shipbuilding capability is 200 times, yes, 200 times more than ours, they launch at least 6 to 7 ships for every one that we do. So we have gotten ourselves into a fix, and we have ignored the threat from China really for too long. It wasn't until 2017 that you could actually say China was an adversary even in the military, or you'd be cashiered.
All right, Grant Newsham, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks. Glad to be here.